In this episode, Ryan and I sit down and give a behind-the-scenes glimpse and a recap of the first ever Banking with Life live event. We had fun and hope you enjoy listening. Thank you. Welcome to the Banking with Life podcast. I'm your host, James Neathery.
And I'm your co-host, Ryan Graves.
Excited to be here at the world headquarters, undisclosed location of the Banking with Life headquarters.
It's good to be back. Feels like it's been a minute.
It has been a minute. Mr. Griggs, it's always nice to see you. I appreciate you driving down here.
Thanks. Yeah, likewise. They finally decided to fix that part of 35E South.
Yeah.
It's nice now. It only took 5 years. I mean, it's been tore up ever since I came out here.
Well, give them time. They'll tear something else up.
I'm sure.
You know.
Government contractor needs some money somewhere.
Yeah, the brother-in-law. Right. Okay, so this is a week post our live event.
First live event. Might need to work on the term live event, by the way. It is a live event, but I don't know, something. But yes, first inaugural, the first Banking with Life, client only live event. I have to stress client only because, I posted about it on Facebook leading up to it, and so we talk about it, and you've shared stories. The other advisors out there, the other agents, wanted all the information about the training event.
Yeah.
That was
How many of those did you get? Because
a handful.
Yeah, we got several. Always at the last minute. Well, not always, but hey, how do I go to that training event? Are you a client? Which we knew the answer to that question. No, I'm an agent. I just need the training.
Yeah.
Did you just skip right over the client only? Right. And then a couple of others. And God bless you. You all have an opportunity to become a client if you wish.
Yeah.
But, and then too, it was the first Banking with Live event. Maybe we can live stream it in the future.
I think in a future. So two things there, right? One, there will be future events. Okay. We've talked. And at this point, maybe at least annually.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, I think because we did a Q&A with you and me towards the end of this one, and that went well. And some of the feedback survey forms, people pointed that out, and I actually enjoyed it. I think it's fun, just take things on the spot, and but that was. And so when we were up there talking, I was like, we should do a live streamed podcast there. Even take questions while we're going.
Yeah.
Give AV Ninja Justin a challenge to splice into
another
questions.
challenge. Talk about the AV Ninja challenges. So this is a beautiful venue down in Fort Worth, Texas.
Cultural district.
Yeah, cultural district. It was in the Botanical Gardens. They have a beautiful lecture hall. Theater seating, nice stage, nice lighting, can accommodate, a lot of people. And now, I have spoken at that venue before, the real estate thing. So, I was aware, and that's kind of why we wound up there. And we had gone twice. The whole staff, had gone to look at it 2 different times. Or maybe the whole staff went one time. And the AV Ninjas went a second time, right? Because they have beautiful audio, visual capabilities. They just didn't have an AV guy. So anyway, my whole point here is we show up early, and Justin spends an hour because after 15 minutes after our arrival, he was informed that there was no sound in the house, right?
Yeah, basically no audio capability at all.
None. And so, he spends an hour trying to figure out the board and trying to get any information from their AV guy, which was futile. And then since there was going to be no success with that, he drives down to our office in Alvaredo's, about 25 miles south of Fort Worth, gets our audio equipment. And so that was probably an hour. So 2 hours out of his time in that morning, and we only had 2.5 hours to set up. at most, and which is plenty of time if everything's going okay. But talk about a challenge. That young man got it done. We captured the audio, we captured the video with no help from the venue. So, and it was all a learning lesson for us. It was the first client-only live event, no question. But, Julie and I have done events for years and years. Most of the team has not had experience doing events. So it was all learning curve. And the clients really wouldn't have known that there was an issue hadn't you not told them. That's how smoothly Justin met and conquered that challenge.
Yeah.
So
I think it's okay to point that out, though.
Point what out?
Overcoming challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, there's a lot of work leading up to the event. And we had fun. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you learn something. That experience, the learning experience, will be rolled up and invested in, applied to the next event.
Yeah, and clients have asked too whether the stuff the talks were recorded. It was recorded. They will be available to my clients, to your clients. How exactly that's going to happen is in process, but it will be available to clients, to current clients.
Yeah, and however long it takes to do the post-production, because Dr. Paul Cleveland spoke. He wasn't able to stay for the Q&A, but so there were 3 talks, a Q&A, and a lot of fun in between.
Yeah. So about 4.5 hours, maybe of talk time. And then, but over the course of a full day, so we made sure to leave a lot of time for people just to talk among themselves. And they were the whole time. People got there early. And people who have thrown events know, to have people show up and stay the whole time is a challenge in and of itself. But to have people show up, stay the whole time, and then come to the very informal after party gathering.
And that was a last minute.
Thrown in. Why not? Let's do it. People would want to. Many came and stayed. And of course, people had to get back on flights because, as we'll talk about, they flew in from all over the country. Mm-hmm.
And we did not really plan that until 3 or 4 days prior to the event.
Yeah. Because
clients were like, hey, are we going to do something afterwards?
Yeah, people were asking.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we did, because there was a in-depth, intensive conversation afterwards. But then this kind of goes back to the whole idea. I mean, and you and I talked about this over the phone several times. It's like, how often do people who are practicing IBC and really practicing, right? They didn't buy the creatively designed policy off the internet to, diversify their investment portfolio.
And the one size fits all.
Yeah. They're seriously banking, either having had started off or acquiring multiple policies, have multiple policies, practicing capitalism on an individual pragmatic level. They are their own banker. But how often do those people get to be in a room with 90 other people who are doing something of the same variety and get to share and talk? And you had podcast guests, clients who had previously been on, they were there. And my response to that was that there is no other.
No.
Where else does that happen? It doesn't happen.
No, talking leading up to the event, we talk all the time, obviously, but when you put a talk together, and we'll get into our talks too, how they came about and how they developed independently. It was, oh my gosh, it was unbelievable in my opinion, and better than I thought it might be. But the value of taking the time out of your schedule, we're all busy, our schedules are full. To take the time out of your schedule on a weekend too. So now you're really cutting into personal time and business time because you're traveling on a Friday, right? To fly across the country, hear 3 guys talk, and that's very valuable. I mean, where can anyone go tomorrow, next week, and hear Dr. Paul Cleveland, Ryan Griggs, and James Neathery speak? Number one. But one of the greatest values, we talked about it, I had mentioned it, is to be exactly like you said, in a room full of people that are doing the same thing. Because there were clients there that were just out of underwriting.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to speak to everyone there. but I know that I had clients there that were 10 and 11 years practicing this concept, and all at different levels, real estate, just personal, whatever their business, and such a diversity of businesses. That's extremely powerful to get into a room, not as opposed to going to, an infinite banking concept event where it's an introductory kind of first time you might have heard about it. No. Mm-mm. Everybody there is paying substantial premiums in relation to what they do in their financial world and are applying, they're financing things. Where can you go and sit in a room full of people that are doing that without, you can't.
You can't.
And you can't put a value on that. And then, to go somewhere, look, if you're practicing the infinite banking concept and you're paying a lot of premium or just a high premium, and you share that with friends, you'll quickly learn that they think you're crazy. So then we all become a little bit reserved, well, I'm going to be very careful who I share this with, what I'm doing, because number one, I don't want to get beat up.
Self-censoring, yeah.
Yeah, self-censoring at all. And then to go from that environment, which is where we're all, typically at.
The norm, yeah.
Yeah, to a room full of people that, I get you. Yeah. I understand what you're doing. Yeah, I can't wait to pay the next premium either. Oh, I didn't know you're doing real estate notes. You're doing real estate. You're doing equipment. You're just building capital to be properly capitalized. You're taking passive income. You're gifting policies to the next generation. Wow, my kids are very little, or we don't have children yet. I mean, that's powerful. So I encouraged everyone to not leave without making new friends, and I believe that happened.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And you're referring to those little survey feedback forms and a lot of positive remarks. I mean, when you're on the side of it where you're putting it on and you have the talk and you're wanting everything to go smoothly, it's kind of hard to, of course I spend as much time as possible with people, but
sure, to
pay attention to how things are going overall, it's like, yeah, well, I don't know. We'll find out after the fact,
prior to the, putting a talk together, are these people going to, these are people that they're your clients, you love them, they're friends, is it going to be worth their time, effort, and energy? Yes, them getting to meet other people, if that actually happens, and it did. But, are the talks, are they going to walk away and feel good about, yes, the money that I spent and the time that I've taken to attend and participate? And then to get past it and look back and it's like, yeah, no, it really was.
Yeah, I felt that pressure for sure. Somebody before I spoke asked me, he's like, is this the talk that you're going to give? Is that, is this something you've done before or you've talked before? And I'm like, look, if the people who have heard me speak most are the people who are in the room.
Exactly.
Because they've all listened to the podcast. And so I can't get up there and just say something I've said before. It's not going to be totally new out of whole cloth, but it's got to be something. It's got to be fresh. And so that was a big weight. Big motivating factor in what I ultimately put together.
Yeah.
And happy to see that a lot of people had nice things to say after the fact.
Exactly.
I was nervous. I was nervous that I was going to be pouring it on too heavy, too intense on the economic side.
Well, there's a moment or two. But they didn't expect anything different.
Right. Exactly. And you and I talked before, and it's like, feel the pressure of wanting to deliver something new to these people who are extremely important to the business. And it's like, at the end of the day, we think that each of us believes and thinks that we've got something to say that people need to hear. And that's what you go do. That's what you go say.
Isn't that the basis of a good talk, a good presentation?
It's everything. I think it's everything.
Yeah. Well, leading up to this, right? I'm not, your PowerPoints are beautiful, all color coordinated, and the graphics, it's just very good. I'm a straight black and white guy, right? And so Jess helped me tremendously putting the PowerPoint together. And the PowerPoint is really for me to stay on track, kind of. I mean, I've got information up there and conveying it. But going back over when we originally, I'm like, okay, we're going to do a live event. And so we start talking. And I prefer to speak in the mornings. All right. And so I was going to talk.
Like we are now, by the way.
Right. I was going to talk first and then have Dr. Paul Cleveland talk. And then you
throw me at the end.
Talk last, right? After lunch, after everybody's carved up. And then as our talks developed independently of one another, Ryan's like, listen, you're going to have to reorder the speaking, lineup. And the reason was because Dr. Cleveland, Paul, gave a very broad talk on broad economics and the history.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Philosophy and the history of social thought, like the origins and the path to this psychopathic emphasis on critical race theory and all of that.
Yeah, when he ties it back to the origins, where else are you going to hear that?
Right.
I don't know. And then you spoke on the modern financial planning has failed.
Yeah. I mean, the economic, identifying the problems of the economic world that are attributable to the existence of fractional reserve banking, so business cycle and inflation, pointing out that the various conventional approaches to financial strategy don't even address those problems. They don't even address the underlying financial problems. And then how IBC is a natural cure to those explicit problems, which set me up to end on a more deeper discussion of the relationship between capital and opportunity. Because especially from current clients, but people who are advanced in the new client process, maybe they've just got policies, maybe they've just paid a premium. It's sort of like this hurry up and wait sort of feeling. I've paid a bunch of premium. I'm building a bunch of cash value. Now what? And I get these questions all the time.
Yep.
I'm sure you do too. What do I use policy loans for? How do I use policy loans? What should I be investing in? These kinds of questions. And my response to that is maybe counterintuitive. And it's the opposite of this avalanche of online social media where everyone's got a mailbox money, cash flowing, passive real estate, passive alternative investment activity that you really need to be involved in and pay them for. And I mean, as I hope I expressed in the talk, if some of that works for you, great. If that's your deal, great. It is not for everybody. And the more, like the subject of my dissertation is capital theory. And then the last part is how my reinterpretation of Austrian capital theory affects or speaks to entrepreneurship. And the more I go down that rabbit hole, the more I see a link in a deeper and just more nuanced way, as Nelson originally pointed out, what that relationship is between capital and opportunity. And the more I do that, the more I see systematic and optimal accumulation of capital as the bridge into entrepreneurial activity. And unfortunately, people hear the word entrepreneur just like they hear the word life insurance, and they think of all the preconceived ideas. They hear the word entrepreneur, they think, oh, Jeff Bezos. And it's like, yeah, no. The entrepreneurship comes in all varieties. There are as many forms of entrepreneurial activity, or as many different, let's say, manifestations of entrepreneurial activity as there are different people. And so the things that people are doing to use loan, or the people that things are using loans for, are things that you'd never think, like you'd have to sit down and like do a creative writing course to come up with some of this. And I even said towards the end of that talk that there's a certain sort of, it's not like arrogance, but I mean, there are a lot of assumptions have to go in to the posture of a conventional financial advisor or one of these alternative people online telling you what the best investment is for you. Like, how do you, that you really got to skip over a lot. And I mean that from a technical perspective, like in order to make a decision in the moment, we're comparing one opportunity to the next best, right? That's the idea of opportunity cost. And if we add in one little assumption, and I don't think it's an assumption, but if we just add in one little observation that the amount of capital that you have and the quality of your contractual control and access to it, if that in turn affects what you perceive to be an opportunity, then there's a sense in which you don't know what the next best opportunity is, given this rising compounded cash value, capital, equity component to your financial profile. Like, maybe the thing you should be doing, you don't yet have enough capital to do. And so maybe it's a matter of waiting and continuing to capitalize. Maybe not, but maybe, right? And so to say that, well, you got to go collateralize a bunch of cash value to take advantage of this cash flow idea that some, investment educator marketeer sent you in your inbox. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe, but is the cost of that you'll be insufficiently well capitalized to take advantage of the thing you should be doing in 6 months or a year? So if we just add in this one little idea that the amount of capital you have access to and control over in turn affects the opportunity landscape as you see it, then I think it just adds to the idea that it's kind of naive to say that some advisor or investment pitcher or somebody is going to... I
like the marketeer. Marketeer.
Is going to tell you what you should be investing in. It's like, I don't know that... I don't think that's appropriate. Not from this perspective. Because the things that people end up doing, I mean, I've talked about Jerry's... What's his last name?
Stringer?
Yeah. Who spoke before on the podcast. He buys a commercial laser engraver... And then he has a wood product manufacturer wanting him to, and he's got so much work that he has to say no. It's like, who would have told him that? Nobody would have told him.
That's what he liked to do. Yeah. That's his hobby that turned into a bigger business than he wanted to.
And how natural and wonderful. Who wouldn't want that?
That's exactly right. It's natural. I love that. It's the idea of patient capital. And when you have access to capital, everything walking down the street that says it's an opportunity may not be an opportunity. Your idea, your perception, your ability to determine what is or is not an opportunity sharpens. I mean, greatly. And then look, you pay life insurance. It's my opinion. You pay life insurance premiums long enough on a mutual company that actually pays dividends and that are actually very strong and prudent and fidelis, right? Or honest with their money. They're not playing games on their books, on their P&L. It's like, you look at what a life insurance policy does. Boring, slow, increase, incremental, everyday increase in capital, every day increasing in value. And it's like, okay, now if I go put the money into real estate, I'm going to get a rate of return. And I've said it many times, I hear it all the time. And, real estate investors, they don't do anything without making 20%. I love that, but they rarely talk about the fails. Okay. But I like real estate. I'm not opposed to real estate at all, but then you've got taxes, insurance, you've got a management of the property and the people, the tenants. And then you look at the long-term internal rate of return on a real estate portfolio over time. And you've mentioned it before that, Ma and Pa going into the real estate business, and all of a sudden you're like Jerry Stringer, you turned into a business that you're not really interested in running.
Yeah, it does. And that's the problem with the whole alternative asset kind of mindset. It's like, okay, that's great, but there's problems at scale.
Yes.
If you scale that up, you're talking about a profession change.
Yeah.
You're talking about a lifestyle change. And maybe that's what you want, and great. But as for somebody who likes what they do in generating income, that might not work, you know? And so there's got part of that part two was, you know, the tax quality, I call it, you know, buy Wall Street products through government programs. That has issues. All the contribution levels are so low. And then you discard the government program, you cap out on the government. So then you're just buying the Wall Street products. Okay, well, all of that's market correlated, subject to the business cycle, not solving for the cost of dependency on the banking system. It's got its own problems. So you go over to the alternative assets. Okay, you can go to town, you know, get as much leverage as you want, buy as much real estate as you want. Well, what are the problems there? Well, because there's a difficulty at scale. Someone who's, you know, a high-skilled professional in healthcare or a high-skilled professional in whatever doesn't have time to have a second career managing 40 doors. And so then you're going to pay someone. Okay, well, that's just another expense to that whole side of the thing. And it's not like you outsource the management of the portfolio and then there's no work. It's now you get to manage the people who are doing the managing. And so it's like, if that's your deal, great. But with IBC, the extent of the management is, let's get the annual statement out of the mailbox and then pay the premium. So that there's a sense in which IBC as a financial strategy is more democratic. It's more open, like people of all kinds of lifestyles, the ones who are the investors, who we're going to go get that second kind of job or career profession, who we're going to make that transition. It's good for them. They still got to solve for exposure to the business cycle and dependency on the conventional banker. It's good for the W-2 employee. It's good for the high-skilled 1099. Right? It like you've said before, very simply and accurately, it's jet engines on whatever it is you're already doing.
You know, look, if you've got $1 million in the bank, it's probably the wrong place to have it. Okay. I mean, it could be that simple, but you know, whatever portfolio, I'm just saying real estate, it could be whatever investment portfolio, you know, the comparison, the alternative, like, wait a minute, if I look at the long-term internal rate of return, and I've done very well with real estate, right. And I like alternative things, but that life insurance portfolio continues to go up, right? And then you look at the net internal rate of return, right? Because everybody's focused on the rate of return. And then you do that net comparison. And then you factor in your time, your experience, right? And the real estate investor rarely factors in their time, right? Yeah, I'm okay with patient capital. And if I'm okay with patient capital and it's accumulating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 368 days a year, okay, it's a matter of time before the proper opportunity there's a match with me, my time, my capital, and the opportunity. So it's not that we're saying that you shouldn't do these other things. Not at all. You do whatever you want. Oh, wait a minute. The banker does get to do whatever they want, right? Who has to go makes the rules. So the capital stock of a bank is money. So all the money that you can get into the life insurance that you can wrap your mind around and just be patient and let it accumulate. It's like, okay. And then what if an opportunity never presents itself? Oh, am I going to be heartbroken? Which I don't believe that'll happen. But no, because I'll take passive income. I'll do whatever I want. I'll give it away, take passive income, do all of it, leave some to the next generation. Right. And my time will be sitting back and enjoying that.
Exactly. Peacefully, you know? And yeah, all under your control. This was one other element too. Wall Street has this idea that, you know, what counts as financial analysis is being able to tell a bigger number from a smaller number.
Yeah, right.
You know, observing the difference in magnitude between two numbers. You know, 8 is bigger than 5, therefore 8 is better.
Yeah,
it's so patronizing. But a lot of the alternative guys and gals on YouTube and social media have implicitly, not like intentionally, they're not like teaming up with Wall Street, but maybe have.
Well, they're not getting deplatformed.
Well, they've picked this up, and there's the titles all day on the YouTube programs, how to get 37.5 or 16 or 12, right? Pick the number.
140% rate of return. Seen that the other day. I wasn't looking for it. It was shared with me.
And then applied it to the IBC or IBC adjacent context. They say, look, dum-dum, my historical rate of return is a number greater than the rate of return on the policy loan. So obviously, you should go do this thing.
Yeah. Everybody else is doing it too anyway. You're missing out.
And that's where my view of, wait, hold on. The decision isn't 5% on the loan versus the prospective rate of return on the investment. And let's assume for the sake of argument that the prospective rate of return on the investment is legitimate. Maybe it's a big assumption, but let's assume that. But that's not the comparison.
No.
The comparison is that number, which we're assuming is real, to what you otherwise could do with that loan money. It's not to the cost of the money. I mean, we get that. If you were to take a policy loan and go invest, would you want a return greater than the loan rate? Yeah, of course. But that's not the decision, right? The decision is one opportunity as opposed to another. Yeah. And so you got to compare to the other. Well, what's the other? Well, you don't really know. I mean, at a given moment in time, you might say, oh, well, this thing out here at 8% or whatever rate of return is greater than the loan rate. Okay, so maybe I should do that. Okay, fine and good, well enough. But it might also help to look at where we are in the business cycle. It might help to think about, well, at what, and I had people, and I asked this question, but I had somebody come up to me after my talk and say this, and he's like, it was at the after party, Austin. He said, what would it be like if I was walking around knowing I could get to 500 grand? What would that be like? What would look like an opportunity to me then?
That's a great question.
And what is, and I've asked that sometimes to people. It's like, and you look at the cash value growth, at current dividend rates and assuming a certain premium, you can see generally what cash values could end up being like if you paid a certain amount of premium and with a certain kind of company. It's like, that's going to be you in X or Y number of years. What's that going to be like? How much of that cash value do you want collateralized when you get there? Right? How much of that cash value do you want collateralized in loans out with the investment pitcher marketeer who's sending you newsletters? I don't know. Right? How much of your cash value do you want collateralized when we go into one of the fractional reserve banking boom bust cycle recessions or depressions, when everything goes on sale for half off? How much of your powder do you want to be dry? How much of it do you want it already collateralized? Yeah. The wise idea may be to say, yep, I acknowledge that rate of return, and I'm sure that advertised rate of return is legitimate and it's greater than my policy loan rate, and all that's fine. But I think there may be a better opportunity on the horizon. So I'm going to exercise my authority as a individual practicing the infinite banking concept who is their own banker, and I'm going to not do that. It's there's just don't stand there, do something. Well, you could turn that around. Just don't do something. Stand there, Patience
is a virtue. Just practicing throughout life. Maybe I'm going to miss a deal. So I'm just building capital. I'm okay with it being patient. I'm okay being patient and having patient, readily available, accessible, on-demand capital. Maybe I missed a deal. I mean, I look back and I missed several deals. So I should have done that. And it was, couldn't wrap my mind around it at the time, but it would have been a home run. And then, you drive by those houses or whatever the deal is. Maybe it's an airplane or a boat or whatever. Am I okay with that? Yeah, because that ain't the last deal that's going to come and present itself. Right. And just like the bigger number, if I borrow at 5 and maybe this opportunity, like you said, if it is legitimate, if you even get a return of your capital, that works. And now we're talking about a greater rate of return above your capital.
Yeah, so an actual net return.
Yeah, the alpha. And it's like, well, if I'm accessing my capital at 5 and I already know what it's going to do, I have an idea of what it's going to do. Dividends go up, dividends go down, and I'm okay with what it's going to do if I do nothing. For me then to collateralize one of the greatest assets that I own, to go, in your example, enjoy a 3% gross rate of return, because that's still taxable income to me, it's a hard no. Okay, so now if I'm going to go out and I'm going to get 10, 15, 20% rate of return, what's the risk?
Yeah.
You know, and what's the real probability of that happening? I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course it happens. Yeah, I'm okay being patient and I'm okay missing a deal or two, right? Because I couldn't wrap my mind around it. But I'm also okay if I do take advantage of leverage in other situations, that I've got patient capital in sufficient quantities that I can maintain the leverage that I do have. Mm-hmm. What's that worth? Well, whenever, you know, of course, we've all said, you know, and you've heard that this is more caught than taught. It's been my experience over the last 31 years that people that have gone through, repossessions, foreclosures, bad business arrangements, partnerships not working out, and God bless you, divorces, which that might not be a good example, but there's asset swapping hands. Right? Mm-hmm. When your assets are removed from your possession, right? Somebody else controls your access to capital. Ooh. And then somebody else is what you're, speaking toward on the investment guru. Somebody else presents you the opportunities, right? Because dumb, you can't figure out what an opportunity is. It's like all of that is a hard no. Thank you. And then the marketeers, I really like that, right? The marketeers that say you got to do this and you got to do that and 140% rate of return. I seen one the other day. They stalked me because I spend too much time looking at them, I guess. The ads on, Facebook and social media. I seen one. If you're an accredited investor with $300,000, we have a $60,000 annual rate of, return. I put in 300 and I get 60,000 a year every year. Yeah. Okay. Right. And you are a great marketer on Facebook or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
One of the sort of transformations in my own thinking as time has gone on, my tolerance for things that I don't feel that I fully and deeply understand has fallen off a cliff. I mean, I think isn't
that funny how the more capital you have, those things that you thought you wanted or were opportunities are like, nah.
Yeah. Suddenly I'm not okay because I'm okay. Right?
Exactly.
And so no. On, anything that makes me side eye or like, I don't get that. It's like gone, because I don't need it.
Is that part of your criteria?
Yep.
To determine?
Absolutely. And I have mentioned it before, we're brought up in this sort of financial paradigm of systematic, severe undercapitalization and class immobility. There are class implications to all of this, where it's fight or flight. And we're this far away from financial deprivation. And so it's, everyone's wound tight. And just like Nelson would point out, money is one of the leading factors of stress, and stress is one of the leading factors contributing to all sort of medical problems. We're all bound up, and just like an animal, when they're backed into a corner, you think you got to react, and it's all instinctive, and it's not contemplative or deliberate or any of that. Well, when you walk out from that corner and you establish your financial domain where you're in control, then suddenly that pressure, that tension to move fast, to be the mover and shaker, it just dissipates. It just dissolves away.
Nelson said it's a very stress-free way of life.
Yeah.
But then to be able to walk into a room full of people that are either there or on their way there, they've recently made the decision that I want to be in that position, but nobody else is I can't get the reinforcement that my decision to go down this path is a legitimate decision. And to the point where I can't share it with other people, even though I love them and I want them to do well. And right, to go from that narrative and walking into a room full of people, there's 105 people there. There's like 13 of us or so. Talk about stress-free. Not only now can I relax, right? And I know you're paying a premium. I know they're paying a premium, and everybody there is paying. The AV guy's paying a premium. You know, the team members are, you know, everybody's paying premium. So it's not this foreign idea. All of a sudden, I'm not the leper.
Right.
You know, it's like, what's that worth? And that's why, part of the reason, that we're going to continue to do events. You know, you said annually. You know, we've agreed annually, and because I wanted to do other events as well. And my team, they've already like thrown it out there. It's going to be in the spring. I'm like, listen, annual is like,
dang,
shouldn't it be
spring, yo, that's in a few months.
I like cool weather, but you know, it's just an incredible value. Because I always relate back to when I first discovered the infinite banking concept. You know, no one, and I'd been a life insurance agent, you know, moderately successful, practicing, you know, an investment advisor, 14 years. And I'd never heard about this. Never heard. No one in the life insurance industry ever said, James, look at what you can do with life insurance when you solve for your need for banking, which none of the marketeers want to talk about. Who's controlling the banking function, right? And then, you know, you get to meet Nelson. That was the only time, really the only opportunity that you had to really dive into this idea of becoming your own banker, listening to Nelson's 10-hour live presentation somewhere. And you know, at the time, I think he was doing 30 to 40 a year. And he's only one man, which my point here is that you couldn't really find too many people that were doing this.
Yeah.
And now you fast forward, you know, 16 years later, you go online and there's IBC this, and, you know, Nelson's name's rarely mentioned. If it is, it's just to say, oh, I'm doing what they're doing, which may or may not be true. It's a different world from then to now. And that ability to walk into a room, meet people, what are you doing? This is what I'm doing. Where are you from? How long have you been doing this? And blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh.
Well, and from like a good illustration of that is how geographically dispersed these people were. I know you took down a bunch of the states. It's on the back of a yellow piece of paper.
I just, because I knew that they were coming from all over the country. I even said this twice. The only reason why I'm here is to meet you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was the first legitimate opportunity that I've had to meet clients face to face. I feel like I know them. I know a lot about them. They feel like they know me, but we never met.
Right.
Okay. So Arkansas, Alaska, Alabama, Arizona, California, Hawaii, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, New York, New Jersey, Texas, of course, Oklahoma, Michigan, Mississippi, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Florida. Those are the ones that I know.
That we can think of.
All right, that's 20 states. So there were over 20 states represented, because I know I missed one or two. And you know, I asked you the other day, I'm like, okay, listen, where could someone go and meet 100 people that are doing this from these various states,
right,
and hear Dr. Paul Cleveland, hear you, and hear me, and meeting each other? Where could that be done? And the closest that I got, well, maybe a Nelson Nash Institute think tank. There might be 20 states represented. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then they're all agents. They're not consumers, right? And then, you know, I did point out that there's probably more premium being paid in that one. How far are we into this? So that, you know, the people who think that these are too long and drop off might not hear that.
45.
But it's the opportunity for you, agent, to pay a higher premium. Okay. That's my encouragement. It's all love, peace, and chicken grease. Right.
Yeah. And I want to say this too, because on the state thing, because I'm very appreciative for the people who find me because they see I'm in Rockwall, Texas, and they're somewhere nearby.
Right.
You know, Wiley, Heath, even in the broader Dallas area, Carrollton, Irving, Plano. For those people, that's how they found me. I'm grateful for that. Okay.
You're just grateful to be found, sir.
I am. But I don't, and I think it's maybe just due to a general lack of understanding about how licensure works in this country for life insurance agents, but the way the NNI practitioner finders is set up, it's like organized by state. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that there's a better way to do it. I'm not saying I have an alternative way, but all the life insurance is licensed by individual state insurance commissions, and they're all reciprocal. So long as you pay the little bribe to the commission in the out-of-state place where the agent doesn't live, they check to make sure that everything's in good order in the home state and the license is issued. No problem. So I've got people, and I'm sure you're in every single one of the 50. I think mine, I'm up like 44 now, and all over. And so
you're more thankful for the people, regardless of where they live, that contact you?
Yeah, well, not more, but like I think some people think that they've got to look in, near, or around where they happen to be.
Yep.
And look, if that's what you want to do, okay. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying you don't have to do it that way. You can find the person you want to watch. And because sometimes, I'm going to be very honest about it, it puts me in an awkward position when, like last week, have a guy who's out of state who found IBC, found Becoming Your Own Banker, read the book, and went and found somebody who was local, got in through the process, and started to feel uncomfortable. And then contacts me and essentially asks me to check the other agent's work. That is awkward. And I don't I'm not asking for that. Don't send me that. I will spend 20 minutes with anybody. I will answer general questions.
So send it to him, but he's only going to spend 20 minutes on it. That's what I'm hearing.
No, that's not what you're hearing. That is the opposite of what you're hearing. I will answer general questions, but the whole checking other people's work, that's not what I'm called to do. I don't want to step on. And I have a particular way of doing this that I learned from you, that I learned from Nelson, that I integrate with my understanding of capital and then my own experience with my own policies. And the result of that...
Isn't that the way it should be?
Yeah. The result of that is a pretty particular philosophy on how this is done, how the company should be evaluated, how the premium structure should be selected, how the premium level should be selected, how the number of policies should be selected, how the system might naturally expand. Like, I've got a particular view on all of that stuff, and the likelihood that it matches exactly what somebody else is doing is zero. Like, I've never seen, and it's like, this. So there's going to be, it's awkward, and I'm not interested in stealing other people's clients. I know everyone's all, white knuckled about that. I'm going to steal someone. I don't care. I would just prefer that people implement with the correct foundation so they can grow sustainably and organically and naturally out into the future, and that they'll be okay, So it's a uncomfortable kind of situation. And I think that, look, if you like what I say, if you like what James says and our particular philosophies or style or whatever, then you need to contact me or you need to contact him. We need to connect directly, because I'm not going to train another agent through you. It's awkward for you. It's awkward for the agent. It's awkward for me. And it most of the time doesn't even, and there's not a follow through. Right? You'll hear a conflicting opinion, then there will be another conflicting opinion, and there will be no change, and it'll just be a whole bunch of awkwardness and time wasted on everybody's side.
Well, did any education happen? Because you've done this.
Yeah, I got to.
We've talked about it. You've talked about it a few episodes. You know, I don't know which ones, but
yeah, I get to learn what other advisors are doing.
Listen, we all pay for our education, right? But did the client learn anything, or
I think so. I mean, I said it was a bizarre case.
I'm not actually, I mean, for details on that one, but you, by all means, share whatever you want to share, but I'm just saying.
All the structures were different, weird numbers, okay? And I asked why. I'm like.
One of the most powerful questions ever.
Yeah. By the way, 10 policies. 10 policies.
All right, we get the details anyway.
First, it's an unusual. The guy's starting off, doesn't own any other life insurance, not doing it. First start off for IBC. He's married. 10 policies. First start. Makes a lot of money. 7 figures. Great. 10 policies.
10 big policies.
Yeah. 5 different companies, 2 each. 10 policies. And I'm like,
I already know why.
Yeah. And so I asked him, like, what? Why? And it was a little bit. Come to find out, it was a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Right. One structure heavy to the base. The other one, little itty bitty base. As little as possible.
Well, direct recognition, non-direct recognition.
Right. All over the place. Yeah. So
diversity.
Shotgun approach.
No, the agent knew what he was doing. I mean, the question is why. He couldn't answer the question why. Maybe he shared
how it led up to it, right?
Right.
It was, I asked the guy what he would do if he was in my position starting over from day one.
That's a great question.
And this was, fine question.
Yeah.
And then this was the proposal. And I said yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, okay, well, maybe why that, why those companies, why those structures, and then of course too, the premium, the total payable premium across all 5 was going to equal his income.
Of course, that's where I want to start
for the first year.
See, I know why, from the agent's perspective, why. I mean, I could break that down step by step of why that was presented to him.
What would that look like? Because what I would think of is. So you got all these contractual relationships, which, okay, great. So you want to spread around the business to the different companies.
Diversity. Okay, and then there's reasons in underwriting. There's all kinds of reasons that's wrong, but and not how to properly start. So what was the result?
Well, I said, look, direct recognition's out. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I don't leave the dang dividend alone. There's enough onslaught on dividends, overall financial surplus yields throughout the economy anyway. This is the one place where we have total control over it. Leave it alone.
Did he have any index dividend options? I'm just asking. Or did you get that deep?
I didn't look at the actual illustration, so I don't know. But 2 of the big 4 companies, I'm sure that was part of it.
Well, a couple of the companies, because I've heard some more of the background of that, but a couple of those companies have the ability to elect an index dividend.
Yeah, where you get to multiply your dividend.
Yeah.
In exchange for direct recognition, right? Yeah.
Well, maybe on a direct recognition company, but there's a company on that list that, they came out about 4 or 5 years ago and sent a letter to all the policyholders. Hey, you have the opportunity to elect an index dividend. And so,
for which there's a cost.
Yeah, there's a cost and there's an opportunity cost. It's like, wait a minute, the dividend is the financial experience of the life insurance company. Okay, so when they're profitable, there's a higher dividend. They're less profitable, lower dividend if they're honest, right? So you want me to put my money into a company that's not profitable or not well run, or you want me, you're implying that you're not going to be profitable and that an index to the S&P 500 or whatever would be better than your profitability. I thought we were talking about mutuality here, right. A mutual life insurance company. Yeah. So
you're not going to fabricate surplus. I mean, the options cost something. So
yes, they do.
Anyway, so all this smorgasbord, and so I ended up telling them I would have done. Look, you want to expand quickly? Good. I'm all for that. The problems are severe. The more you earn, the greater the problem is with dependency on the bank. He says, I'm all for that. Do you start at premium equaling income? No. I would have cut the number in half. There would have been, he's a investor type. seasonal, cyclical, uncertain cash flows. I said, so the majority of whatever the premium number would have gone with a company with an extremely flexible PUA rider so that you can control when you pay that PUA, like when the cash flow is actually available, right? And if you really wanted to have multiple companies, then okay, we could have, going in, one, non-direct recognition, two, knowing the relative trade-offs with restrictiveness and inflexibility with the PUAs. And then if you get 6 months into it and it's like, yeah, this is easy, let's do it again. Fine. We submit the new paperwork, backdate, whatever, keep the same attained age. It's like, but you roll it out over a period of time. And, I just remember, and maybe I told you, I was like, had that been the process, because our process, every agent's process is different, right? Yeah. Understanding what goes into these policies, if that's even an objective of the advisory conversation in the first place, is different. And so it's like, maybe, who knows? Maybe I have clients who they go through the process and they still don't fully understand. I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of my people, vast majority, all of them, have a pretty firm understanding, pretty particular understanding of what they own and why and how it's going to play out. Yep. My point is, the concern, the anxiety, I would hope wouldn't have even been there, but it's all that's beside the point. It's like, it's so awkward in the first place. Like, if you like how I approach things, griggscapitalstrategies.com. If you want to have somebody who's local, great, NNI practitioner finder. But I don't want to check somebody's work.
And you spent more time here explaining that than you did with the guy on the phone call. Thank you.
No, this is going to last forever. Though. Provide ongoing value.
I appreciate that. And I have no idea why people do what they do. I have no idea why agents do what they do.
Well, let's talk about that diversity thing. I need to diversify, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's your, James, I'm coming back from my second or my third policy. Shouldn't I get a different company just to be diversified in companies?
If we use a different company, it would not be because we're seeking diversity. As a matter of fact, let me see. You diversify when you do not know what to do, or you do not know what you're doing. You concentrate when you do know what you're doing. So that's my general opinion and thought process, thoughts in my experience when it comes to diversity. So, my wife and I own every company that I represent. I put my money in first wherever I encourage my clients to consider putting money. I'm the guinea pig. I'm the canary in the coal mine, and I think that that's proper and right, and I'm okay with that. Using more than one company is legitimate. I don't want just one policy, so I want to kind of go back to the structure and the natural expansion. Just because Ryan, we talk about structure, properly structured, and a legitimate policy on you where you're at, does not mean you're never going to buy more policies in the future. Okay. So, and the learning curve, we're all at the beginning when we're exposed to this idea. We're at the front end of the learning curve, and it continues, rightly so. We are learning creatures. We're going to learn our whole life. Unless you've reached the arrival syndrome, then God bless you. So that's my comment on diversity.
Yeah. And I like that there's a trade-off between diversification and concentration. And I was looking for somebody had made a quote about, diversification is basically the strategy of ignorance. I mean, if you don't know what's going on, then you diversify.
Exactly.
And it's a carryover from why is ignorance a concern? Well, because you might lose, right? There might be a financial loss.
And that goes back to the modern financial construct does not account for the business cycle, does not account for funny money.
Right.
So their strategy to combat that is this balanced portfolio of 60-40.
Right. Defensive, diversified.
Exactly. So look, when the equities are down, your bond values are going to be up, or your fixed positions are going to be up, and vice versa, and the buffer and all that. It's like, so they have a strategy. It's just not legitimate.
Right.
The probability of success is.
Well, you could say technically it does not address two of the most fundamental glaring problems in the economic landscape.
It doesn't. It's an elementary defense.
Yeah.
And we talk about markets. So don't, please. Every market on the face of this earth is manipulated. Okay. So you want to talk about fundamentals? You want to talk about all that? How do you use fundamentals with a manipulated market?
Yeah.
It's a legitimate question.
I know.
So it's very elementary. Well, we're going to do 60-40 or these new target date funds, right? A target date fund is nothing but a balancing of portfolio.
It's algorithmically traded. That'll go well.
Yeah. The further away my retirement date is, the more weight I'm going to have in equities. The shorter the duration between now and retirement, I'm going to be heavily more weighted to fixed, bonds. And it's like, that's pretty, you cannot get any more elementary than that.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have a strategy. It's just like, okay.
Well, but people would ask Nelson, he's like, yeah, I'm diversified in lives insured. Mm-hmm. And there you go. So, when I have that video on YouTube, it's 5 criteria used to evaluate life insurance companies from the perspective of IBC. It's not that long of a title, but it's on the YouTube channel. And it's like, once you approach the selection of the question of company selection from the perspective of IBC, maximum control, maximum flexibility, maximum unconditional contractual control, right? Don't ask for underwriting to do certain things. And you start to narrow the field down. In my view, that forms a hierarchy, and there's a preference list, and you get as much as you can over time in the most contractually favorable environment. And the fear of loss, first of all, these are all companies that have paid a dividend, generated a positive financial surplus for over 100 consecutive years.
Think about that. I mean, that's said all the time.
Yeah, people jump over it.
Wait, and you've probably heard it before. 100 years, over 100 years. Okay, so here we are in 2022. So 100 years is, 1922. Over 100 years. Let's go back to the mid-1850s.
Mm-hmm.
All right, come forward. All right. So we have the panic of 1877, 78, 1896, 1901, 1907, 1910, the First World War. Right. Oh, that couldn't happen without a central bank, 1913. The First World War, the results of that devastated Europe, right? The panic of 1920, and these were panics. They weren't depressions back then, right? Okay. Everybody jumps over 1920, right? Because there was no government intervention. Mm-hmm. So it's a quick recovery. The Roaring 20s, 1929. Okay. The depression that was manipulated, intensified, 29, 30, 33, all the shenanigans that the second great wave of socialism, FDR, did to us and the American public. Okay, so then we go right into World War II, right? And we do the Korean War, the conflict, right? Then the Vietnam War, all of the other, empire expansion activities. Okay, the Bretton Woods Agreement, I jumped over that in 1944. Okay, coming forward to the Vietnam War, then you're all over the Middle East. And then the panics that have happened, the 71, okay, the inflationary period after that. There's an inflationary period in the late 60s. Then we have the 80s, and then we have the 90s, 2000, 2008, 2017, this constructed ordeal that we've all been drugged through the last 3 years with viruses and shutting down the supply chains and all that. And these companies have paid a dividend through every one of those years. What? Tell me where else that's happened.
Yeah.
That wasn't, a government subsidized, entity.
Right.
No, don't jump over that dividend being paid. Oh, wait, and the dividend, it's classified in the Internal Revenue Code as a return of premium. Okay, I've said it many times. I don't care what you classify it as. I don't care. Just pay me the dividend right into the PUA that buys more death benefit, that earns future dividends, and goes immediately to accessible by contract cash value. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, it's a legitimate question. If you haven't thought of these things before, you want to know about the financial integrity of and I get that. I'm just saying that I wouldn't say concerns about that are a reason in and of themselves to diversify among other companies. I think things like contractual favorability should determine the decision. I've told people, if anyone's going to cause you to diversify, it might as well be the company telling you that you can't buy anymore. Anyway, so that's I think that's a good response to that diversification question. It might be appropriate to have more than one. It might not. I think the evaluation of the contractual favorability of the terms and conditions of a particular policy should drive that conversation. It drives how I choose which company to purchase from.
Supported by their financial integrity.
Right.
Historically. Supported by their philosophy. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's okay. You mean the home office of every corporate institution in America, including the life insurance companies, have a philosophy? You know as dang well as I do. Yes, they do. So if I'm going to put a substantial amount of my capital in there, I want philosophies that align with mine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very powerful. So how did that, not to throw you off track, but how did that 20-minute, I bet you went over to that 20-minute phone call go?
I stayed pretty close to 20.
Okay, good job. I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
Very good.
No, it ended there. And that's
all right,
good. I'm sure he'll be fine. I'm sure it'll all go well.
So you got educated a little bit, right? He got educated, and then he filtered that through whomever he's working with.
I'm sure he's going to go do the same thing that he was going to do anyway.
Yeah. But, he shared your stuff, or they shared your stuff with whomever. Sure. So everybody got educated. Yeah. That's all my, good.
Never get that time back.
Yeah.
So,
well, that every bit of this speaks to what I spoke on.
Yes.
Every bit of it. Proper structure and why it matters, and how I believe and see that it's been twisted since Nelson's work. And then expansion is natural, very natural. And there's a method, a correct, in my opinion, method that's natural to expand.
Well, we've said before that there's no one-size-fits-all correct premium structure for all policies for all people at all times. But you got a layer of resolution higher in your talk and identified a tendency. Like you've said in the past too, and I really like this, and I've shared it with a lot of people, that as the level of income rises, the percentage of it that goes to premium should also increase, right? That's one of these general tendencies that you can identify in a sort of, not typical, none of it's typical, but in the form of the growth pattern of one's journey into IBC, right? And that's exactly correct. Someone earning $500,000 should be paying a greater percentage of that money than somebody earning $50,000.
Yeah, because they didn't start out earning $500 either.
Right. So it should increase. Well, with respect to premium structure, you pointed out, and I'm paraphrasing, but that the younger you are, in general, the more of your annual premium outlay should go to base.
Yes.
And the older you are, that may decline as time goes on.
But there's a limit even then. Because you can pay too low of a base premium.
So what went into all that? Like what what led you to isolate that observation?
Really, it's over the last 16 years of practicing personally and professionally with my clients. And then going back, reading, rereading, understanding Nelson's work in becoming your own banker, looking at what he did below the surface without being a life insurance expert, but history or experience in the life insurance industry helps. But I say it, Nelson's work needs no defense, and it is not outdated. Although he had this vision over 40 years ago, and he published the book over 20 years ago, it is still correct. His work and what he did is right. And I pointed out some of the differences between then and now, and their industry changes that we had no control over. And in spite of the industry changes and in spite of the noise, because I did spend some time on the noise. Was anyone shocked? This is still fundamentally the correct solution to our current financial construct that we're born in. So my observations and experience. I've done 90-10 policies. I've done 94-6 policies in the past.
Yeah.
Well over 10 years ago. I understand what the result of that is.
And you called that fragility.
It is fragility.
What did you mean? Well, I know what you meant, but
okay.
Explain what you meant when you said that.
So the more a policy is contorted today by the use of term riders, blended PUA, the blended PUA is a blend of PUA and term coverage. The more you manipulate a policy to get a higher cash value in the early years, the more fragility you add to that policy. And the fragility that I am generally, specifically speaking of, is the ability to pay a premium is going to diminish greatly or completely. And the probability of a MEC, modified endowment contract, occurring is through the roof. And so the illustration that, and I was pretty heavy on where to start, how to start. I didn't spend a lot of time on the why. I think intuitively the clients would understand why, because I tied it back to Nelson.
Yeah.
Okay. Like the MEC test, I look at an illustration, it's going to show me a 7-pay test premium
for limit, those first 7 years.
Right, which is a MEC premium. Okay. It's not, and if everything on that illustration does not change, then it may not show a MEC. Okay. When you use a blended PUA, for example, the dividends are going to go up, the dividends are going to go down, the dividends are allocated to pay the increasing cost of the blended term component. All right. So you can't control the dividend, neither can I. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. The term cost is going to go up. Any change to that, there's a potential for a MEC, because the 7-pay test, the MEC test, is a reoccurring test. There's the primary, the initial MEC test is right there. The secondary, the tertiary, the future MEC testing that is going to happen is not going to be reflected in that illustration if there's any change made to that illustration.
Yeah. One term you've used in the past that I really like is dividend dependence. The less in base, the lower the initial death benefit, the more dividend dependent, meaning the more death benefit that's going to come is going to come from an uncertain dividend.
And the cash value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a consideration with respect to the MEC, because there's got to be that necessary relationship, and some people don't understand that it could, if dividends are higher or if dividends end up being lower, in either case there could be a MEC problem,
and both are going to happen.
Right. Because it's not about whether the dividend is higher or lower. It's about the relationship between the death benefit and the cash value. And dividends are affecting both the death benefit and the cash value.
Yes.
And I one thing I've pointed out too, and this is like the effect of dividends on death benefit and cash value. Like the effect of dividend on cash value is level, right? No matter the amount, as time goes on, no matter the amount of death benefit purchased by the dividend, the worth of that new death benefit, the cash value of it, is the magnitude of the dividend, right? That's the death benefit is worth what, but as I get older, those PUA premium dollars are buying less and less death benefit. But that lesser and lesser death benefit is worth the same. It's worth what was paid for it. And so there's this relative...
And it's okay to back this up and listen to this 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. There's a relative diminishing effect on death benefit of the dividend with a constant effect on the cash value. Yes. And if the idea of a MEC is death benefit gets too close to the cash value, for the MEC, then the further out you go and the more of the death benefit that comes from the dividend there is, then just like you said, the likelihood of something going wrong, be it the cost of the term changes, the cost of the annuity terms, the dividend is higher or lower, or you don't pay the PUA that's illustrated, or a combination of the 3.
Or maybe I lower a PUA in 1 year and raise it the next year.
Any of that,
all of it,
can result in MEC problems.
Yeah. And so then the MEC solution, right? I don't want a MEC. Okay. Number 1, don't pay a premium. That may or may not prevent a MEC.
Right.
Okay.
May have to do something more.
Buy more term if you can, or continue paying that term rider if you can, which the cost of the term, all term, has an exponential cost. Now, we can buy levelized term 10, 20, 30 years, no question. Well, why don't they sell a 40 or 50-year term? Okay. So I'm telling you, this is worth listening to several times. But then that's just the example on the blended PUA.
Right.
Now let's use a separate standalone term rider added to the policy. Raising the death benefit to raise the MEC premium to allow a higher PUA premium. That's either a 10-year term rider, a 20-year term rider, or a 30-year term rider. Mm-hmm. And then that premium is going to go up. Most likely, that term rider is going to come off of the policy. Therefore, the death benefit drops by that amount, which the lower the base, the more dramatic the drop in death benefit in the future, that shoots the probability of MECing through the roof.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm telling you.
And the further out you go, so the younger you are when you start, right? Because you're going to live longer. The further out you go, the worse that problem becomes.
Yes. And you can't change that. I can't change that. The actuaries at the life insurance companies can't change. They know, right?
Yeah.
But I mean,
so therefore, the younger you are, the more to the base there should be.
Yes.
So that all of those problems are relatively minimized.
Right.
Man, come on.
Okay. All right. And then I want to kind of, I'm commenting on my talk interspersed through this. Okay. Because I want to go back to the way
that's what you show, by the way. You showed like examples of families or people at different ages with particular policies, premium levels, structures.
And they're all different.
And they're all different.
The structures were different.
Come on.
The policies were different, right? Every one of them. Not one of them were the same by ratio, duration, premium. And then, of course, I brought in the limits. I'm not trying to overeducate. I just, my whole point was to meet people I had never met before. Okay. And I always love to see my friend, Dr. Paul Cleveland. Okay. And then to tie back to what Nelson did, right, which is still right, it's still relevant, needs no defense. And I didn't interpret, reimagine, add to anything of Nelson's work. All I did is tie to it.
It's just extrapolating and...
Okay, then considering these changes within the industry, the 7702, the CSO table changes, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then, show the different generations, Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4. And I didn't duplicate exactly Nelson's even distribution of age classes. Page 71, Becoming Your Own Banker, whomever you are. After you've read that book a time or two, the second book, Building a Warehouse of Wealth, How Privatized Banking Really Works, please go back to Nelson's book. Spend time on equipment finance and an even distribution of age classes. Okay? Okay. All right. So I just did the how to start that, and I said it and I believe it because it's true. Our limits are between our ears. All right. So you got to understand that it is what it is, and change is difficult. I get all that, but wouldn't it be prudent to expand our limits, to expand our knowledge, to expand out of our comfort zone? Right. Okay. Anyway, I tied back into how to start, how to naturally expand through 4 generations. But I wound up with, and this is a broad overview, I only had 1 hour and I talk slow. So, passive income in retirement, because that is, and I've said it many times, that is very, it's just lacking in the infinite banking footprint. How to take passive income. And so I touched on that, and I showed, and I'm going to use this in this is foundational work for the book that I am writing.
Put it out there.
Put it out there.
Yeah.
Okay. And I showed the passive income, and while I was putting the talk together, I get all kinds of emails and all this information. Like everyone, we're bombarded, and a lot of mine is financial information that comes in, and of course history and philosophy and doctrine. And okay. I took the article with me, and it was a 4% rule, right? And the 4% rule is, if you have $1 million portfolio at retirement, how much can you draw down and not go broke? It's called the 4% rule. It's been out since the 80s, 90s, and all of the big, Ivy League schools have written papers, and all the economists have written papers, and then they rewrite them. It goes from 4% whenever the markets are booming, and then you'll have a great article. And documented. These are not just, drive-by commentaries, okay? And when the market, is correcting, maybe 3%. Well, this article was Rethinking the 4% Rule. 2 economists wrote it. And it should be more successful. The higher probability of success should be 1.9. So if you have $1 million portfolio at retirement, the drawdown rate should be 1.9, and you won't go broke. With modern life expectancy, right? Okay, and so you just do some calculations. The 4% rule, $1 million, you could earn $40,000 in income that's taxable. God bless you. You better have a couple of million stacked up, right?
The business cycle still flowing. Yeah.
Inflation crushing. Okay. And wait, when is that going to change? It's not going to change. So if you don't do something, who will? Okay. All right. And then the 3% rule. Okay. Well, now you get to enjoy 30 grand. This article, 1.9%. I get to enjoy $19,000 of taxable income if I have $1 million in retirement, and I'm going to be happy with that. You better have multiple millions, right? Yeah. And so I just took the cases that I built, and I took great joy in not showing a single illustration. Okay, but I think I conveyed what I was trying to convey. And I took the cases, the second generation, middle-aged generation, and took them through how to naturally start, how to expand, but I took them through passive income, passive income. And they had over $1 million, and they didn't start at 20. I think they were at 45 when they started. All right, and they had over $1 million, but I didn't show income until 70 because life expectancy is increasing. But I demonstrated that they could enjoy without any financing,
without doing anything, paying a premium.
And then, but I did touch on how to finance with that.
The things that they were already doing. Yeah. But nothing, no cash flow investment.
Yeah, none of that. Right. But if they did any of that and it was successful, it would just be better. Yeah. A $70,000 tax-free income. Well, hell, that's a 7% rule, isn't it? That number's bigger than that number.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so, and then, and I appreciate the prompt, because, I mean, if, you get on up there, you're speaking in front of these people that you love and you care about, but self-critical, and, you get kind of focused and, don't realize how bad the AV situation is, whatever else is going on. And so I appreciate your prompt on closing remarks, right?
Yeah.
Because then I brought up page 38, right, which was I felt like appropriate, from Nelson, page 38, becoming your own banker, this idea that you should maybe get together with like-minded people, some that have more experience than others, a broad, diverse range of experience, because we all have a tendency to feel like the Lone Ranger. And we used to give out Lone Ranger awards. This was the first live client-only Banking with Life, but, we've done seminars and events for years. And I say it because I'm very proud of it. Looking back, 27 events in 1 year. Jeez. And that was just Julie and I and Carol.
I'm recovered from the last one.
So, the value of getting together and kind of going back to the bases, the connection with Nelson, coming forward, and then of course I was building up to formulating the talk, which I've been thinking about this for months. Right? What do I want to say? What do I think needs to be heard with all of these people at different levels, different income, different parts of the country, geographical, oh my gosh, it was beautiful. And I think I said what I wanted to say, but I was concerned that, is it being too simplistic? Is it being too broad? Then I'm reassuring myself that, yep, this is what I want to say. This is what I think needs to be heard. And we're going to do more events, and it's going to be built upon, idea upon idea, concept upon concept, precept upon precept.
Yeah.
So
if I could go so far to say, I think sometimes you think things that you have to say are simple, and you self-criticize them as being simple. But then to me, it's like, no, there's so much wisdom in that. It actually is the opposite. It needs to be unpacked to demonstrate not the complexity, but just to demonstrate everything that's implied or embedded in what could be misconstrued as simple. Like, that's why, like, the idea.
I appreciate that.
Well, because like the idea that there's a spectrum, that everything else equal, the younger you are, the more there should be to the base. The older you are, there can be less within limits, and then the reasons why, like what it means for there to be greater fragility and greater dividend dependence, and how you can complicate that with all sorts of other manipulations, blended term, what have you. I mean, that's got to be unpacked. I mean, like to just say that at the outset, it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah. I mean, it's simple in the sense that I can understand that, but to uncover the reasoning behind it, it's like, first of all, nobody else is saying any of that, and second, it's like that. Yes, like that makes complete sense, and that is original and insightful. I really appreciate that. It's like
the properly structured. You hear that? I've said it. I say it, and I'm almost tired of hearing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody says properly. What does that mean? So, unpacking. Like, I was talking with Justin, the AV Ninjas, Justin and Josh, because look, we get back, we're all wiped out. I mean, I'll go to the after party. I was just going to say hi to the people that I didn't get to say hi to, and I wound up closing the place down.
We stayed for a long time.
It was fun.
I was so exhausted. I'm like, I'm telling my mom, who flew in from California, who works with me, and it's like, Mom, I got an hour, and we're going. I got an hour drive back to Rockwell, and it seems like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I know.
Got back and crashed.
Right, slept late. Got an IV the next day. Fort Worth View. That was a hotel, not quite a rooftop, but like a rooftop.
Rooftop, yeah.
Okay.
In the stockyards.
Yeah, looking down on the stockyards, looking at the skyline of Fort Worth, which I'm a Fort Worth boy.
Yeah,
okay.
And good job, Julie, for picking the location.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Good job, Jules. But the talking with Justin, because we get back and, we're all wiped out. And I'm telling you, recovering from an AV curveball, that straight up worst curveball in front of a room full of people, under pressure. And I know he was sweating on the inside, but boy, you couldn't tell it looking on the outside. So good job again, Justin. We come back, we're recovering, right? And we're like, what do we do right? What could we do better? What do we learn? How can we, make the next one better? And him and I were talking, and we're talking about how many speakers, how many speaking slots could there be in a day without wearing everybody out and still, make it informative and valuable. And he said it himself, it's like he thought each of the speakers could have gone an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I know you, and I know Dr. Paul Cleveland as well, and I know myself. I mean, I can talk for 10 hours.
The whole day,
yeah, all day. So this idea of unpacking will and is happening.
Yeah, and people ask, if there'd be another one, would you do the same stuff? And it's like, no. I mean, I can't. It really, the idea of me just repeating myself bothers me. And so it's got to be new. It's got to be fresh. I mean, not totally out of whole cloth, but it should naturally build. I mean, then imagine this, the building up progressively event after event of this library of client-only material that has just built and built and built. I mean, come on.
It makes me want to become a client. And let me tell you, these people are cool people. These are not, these are cool, interesting, creative, getting it done, salt of the earth people.
Yeah. Yeah. To be paying a big old bunch of life insurance premium to get on a flight, to come to Texas, to meet a bunch of strangers. I mean, you got to be
well, there's that. But I mean, individually, what they're actually doing, restaurant owners, or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Watchmaker, artist.
Yes.
You name it.
Models.
Yeah.
They're look, there's some GQ looking men there. And not to mention the women. Oh my God. I mean, I'm just saying.
Professors.
Yes. Several professors, economists, CPAs, medical professionals. Yep. I mean,
businessmen.
Yeah. And they're what they are doing individually. And then what they do on their free time, because I'm friends with them on Facebook. They're creative. Mountain climbers, scaling mountains and flying, hang gliding, whatever it is they do. I mean, pretty dang creative people. Yeah. So, yeah. And they took the time, spent the money to fly.
Yeah.
Right. And so they could have picked somebody off the practitioner program across the street and wouldn't have to. And of course they don't have to. I mean, we have an open door policy. You can fly in here anytime and sit right here. I'm kidding. I'm just saying there's a lot of value. I had fun. Can't wait to do it again. And it will be built upon work will be added to. And now I like repeating certain things. I think repetition is good when it's good. But to say the same thing over and over or to present, no, there's an expansion, right? Because this is what we're all doing and what we all want to do. I want to know what you're doing. If it's good and you're willing to share, right? Because iron sharpens iron. I want to know, I want them to share with each other what they're doing and why and what their thought process is. And to be able to do that in modern terminology in a safe environment.
A safe space for IBC people.
Oh, jeez.
I was thinking that's what we should have called it, Banking with Life live at the garden, Botanical Garden rather than Madison Square Garden. Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought it back to Nelson. I mean, this really is part of IBC. There's a necessary community aspect of coming together, of talking with one another, of sharing, there's just nothing regular about it, but fellowship, just hanging out, and then also edification and deeper conviction and equipping. I mean, a big part of what I wanted to convey is that there's an economic armor to these ideas. You know, this idea that you're going to go online and feel bullied, or the people who are laughing or poking fun because you're paying a big old premium in the worst place you could ever put money. It's like, no.
Or you paid a big high base premium.
Right.
Or whatever.
Yeah. No. There are reasons for taking this approach. Yes, they need to be better and progressively better and more well argued over time and articulated over time. But that's the reason to come together, to continue to improve. And there's a preference granted to current clients, to people who have taken action and demonstrated that they're going to live their financial lives this way. So they get client-only events.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important because, without patronizing, I think that our clients already get things that they couldn't get elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like this team, unbelievable. Our process, it's a beautiful process, in my opinion. We're always seeking to improve it. And they get that access to the team, to me. That's valuable. But then that additional other people that are just like, there's not a life insurance agent or an advisor that is trying to do anything other than educate. Mm-hmm. So, I want a lot more of that.
Well, and what I'll say too, the last thing I'll say is that it gives me the opportunity to push myself too, right? To crystallize the things that are on my mind into particular, articulated thought to then share with others. It's a great opportunity to combat the arrival syndrome on all fronts, for me, for the clients, to continually push back those frontiers.
It's humbling. You go speak to 100 people.
Yeah,
right?
You better know
that
what
are
you
smart
want to say.
people.
Yeah.
They're intelligent people. Very humbling. It's like we're speaking to 9,000 now, potentially, or 100, whatever. But it's different, right? So you're behind the lens, right? It's not like you're in the room right there.
Yeah, a little more intense when you're right there.
So does that mean you're hungry? It's like that's the last thing you're going to say. You got to go eat.
Yeah, hour and 40. So I feel that's a good recap.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And thanks for listening. I had fun.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, y'all.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.